I am Mr. Eugene, and today we're talking about the single biggest mistake men make in their relationships. Not how they behave once they're in them, not how they handle conflict or communication, or any of the other things that relationship advice typically focuses on. We're talking about what happens before all of that, the selection process, the vetting, the decision about who gets access to your life in the first place. Because here's what I've come to believe after years of observation, years of personal experience, and years of conversations with men who've been through the full arc of what bad selection costs you. Most of the suffering men endure in relationships is not the result of bad luck. It's the result of bad choices made without sufficient information, without sufficient self-awareness, and without any real framework for evaluating what actually matters in a woman beyond whether she's willing to be with you. Let me start with a framework that changed how I think about people entirely, not just women, but everyone. Years ago, I worked with a man who was one of the most gifted talent evaluators I've ever encountered. Big presence, deep experience, the kind of clarity about human nature that only comes from paying careful attention to people for a very long time. He was brought in to help us work through some staffing problems. And he said something that has stayed with me ever since. He said, there is a fundamental difference between bad behavior and bad character. If someone has bad behavior but good character underneath it, you have something to work with. You can address the behavior. You can correct it. The foundation is sound even if the surface needs work. But if the character itself is gone, if what you're dealing with is not a person who occasionally behaves poorly, but a person whose core values and integrity have deteriorated into something that cannot support a healthy relationship, then there is nothing to work with. No amount of effort, patience, or goodwill will change that. The only rational response is to exit. That distinction between behavior and character is one of the most useful lenses a man can apply when evaluating the women in his life, and most men never apply it at all. Most men are making their selections based on something considerably less sophisticated than character assessment, and then they spend years paying the price for it. Stay with me. This is important. The double standard. Nobody names. Before we get into why men make poor selections and how to make better ones, I want to name something that makes even having this conversation culturally difficult. There is a profound double standard in how our society responds to the evaluation of male versus female character. If a man behaves poorly, if his ethics are questionable, his reliability is poor, his values are compromised, he can be called out, named, held publicly accountable. Society has no difficulty applying character standards to men and enforcing them through social pressure, professional consequences, and public scrutiny. But if you apply the same scrutiny to a woman, if you examine her character honestly, evaluate her behavior against a clear ethical standard, name what you find and discuss its implications, you are immediately in contested territory. The accusation of misogyny is never far behind. The suggestion that you're simply prejudiced against women for holding them to the same character standards you'd apply to any man. This double standard is so thoroughly embedded in our culture that most men don't even notice it operating. They've absorbed the message so completely that applying character standards to women feels somehow impermissible, somehow unfair, even though applying those same standards to men is not just permissible but expected. Let me be direct. Women are not exempt from character assessment. High character and low character exist in women exactly as they exist in men. And a man who selects a partner without honestly assessing her character is making one of the most consequential mistakes of his life, while the culture cheers him on for being non-judgmental. What you can and cannot control. Here's a critical distinction that will save you enormous amounts of wasted energy if you internalize it properly. The difference between what is within your control and what is not. You cannot control women's behavior. You cannot control the culture that enables poor female behavior. You cannot control feminism, legal systems, social media dynamics, or any of the broader forces that shape the landscape you're navigating. All of that is outside your control, and spending your energy on it produces nothing useful. What you can control is yourself, your decisions, your standards, your development, your selection process, your willingness to walk away from situations that don't serve you, the man you become between now and the moment you invite anyone into your life. This is not about letting women off the hook for genuinely destructive behavior. They are responsible for what they do, but their responsibility and your response to it are separate questions. And the only one you can actually do anything about is yours. The narrowing down that happens when you accept this is clarifying rather than limiting. You stop spending energy on things you can't change and start directing it entirely toward the one thing you can, who you are, what you require, and who you allow close to you. Why men pick wrong, the root causes. Let's get specific about the mistakes, because understanding why men make poor selections is the prerequisite for making better ones. The deepest and most foundational cause is low self-esteem rooted in an undeveloped life. When a man hasn't built his own framework, when he doesn't have clarity about his direction, stability in his finances, certainty about his values and what he stands for, he doesn't feel genuinely worthy. And a man who doesn't feel worthy doesn't select from strength. He selects from gratitude. He takes what's available rather than choosing what's right. He confuses a woman's willingness to be with him for evidence that she's the right woman, when her willingness tells him nothing about her character whatsoever. This is like being handed dangerous equipment before you've had any training to use it safely. The equipment isn't the problem, your unreadiness is the problem. And rushing into a relationship before you've done the foundational work of building yourself is not just premature, it's genuinely hazardous. Build yourself first. Career, financial stability, clarity of purpose, knowledge of who you are and what you require. Not because women demand these things from you, though high-quality women do value them, but because you cannot select well from a position of need and inadequacy. You can only select well from a position of strength and sufficiency. Closely related to this is the need to be needed. Men are built with a deep drive toward purpose and usefulness. This is one of our genuine strengths, the drive to contribute, to solve, to protect, to make ourselves indispensable to the people we care about. But this strength has a vulnerability attached to it, and low-character women know exactly how to exploit it. The damsel in distress is not always a conscious manipulation. Sometimes it's simply a pattern of behavior that has worked before and continues to be deployed because it produces results. A woman in crisis, a woman who appears to need rescuing, triggers something powerful in a man that bypasses his rational assessment process and pulls him into commitment before he's had sufficient information to make that commitment wisely. Crises are the worst possible context for making important decisions. The urgency that a crisis creates, the pressure to act, to help, to commit now because the situation demands it, is precisely the environment in which your best judgment is most compromised. Whatever decisions you make about commitment, make them from calm, stable ground with sufficient time to assess clearly, never from the pressure of someone else's emergency. Then there's the fear of being alone. This one is universal. It affects men, women, everyone. The fear of being alone with your own thoughts, the discomfort of genuine solitude, the voice in your head that gets louder when there's no external noise to drown it out. This fear drives people into relationships they would never choose if they were making the decision from a place of genuine comfort with their own company. Learning to be alone, genuinely comfortable with your own presence, your own thoughts, your own silence, is not just a psychological health goal. It's protective armor against bad selection. A man who is at peace alone cannot be manipulated by the threat of loneliness. He cannot be pressured into commitment by the fear that if he lets this woman go, he'll find himself with nothing. He selects from genuine desire rather than from the desperation to fill an unbearable emptiness. Everyone dies alone. There is nobody else in that moment with you. Learning to be comfortable in your own company early means that solitude loses its terror, and losing its terror removes one of the most powerful forces pushing men toward women they should never have chosen. Drama addiction is another pattern worth naming clearly. Some men are drawn to dramatic women not despite the chaos but because of it. The volatility feels like intensity. The conflict feels like passion. The explosive arguments followed by intense reconciliation feel like evidence of deep feeling. They are not. They are evidence of instability. And instability in a woman is a permanent feature, not a temporary condition you can calm with enough love or patience or consistent presence. A woman who creates drama consistently is going to create drama consistently for as long as she's in your life. The chaos does not become peace over time. It compounds. Walk away from drama before it has a chance to become your drama. Broken relationship models represent a subtler trap. If you grew up watching your parents navigate their relationship poorly, chronic conflict, emotional volatility, poor communication, patterns of disrespect or neglect or dysfunction, you have internalized a blueprint for what relationships look like that is fundamentally broken. And you will unconsciously seek out relationships that replicate that blueprint because it's familiar, because familiar feels like home even when home was harmful. Recognize this about yourself honestly before you pursue anything serious. If your relationship models are broken, acknowledge that you're starting from a deficit and that the kind of man you need to be to attract and sustain a healthy relationship is not something you observed in formation. It's something you're going to have to build deliberately from the ground up. And never enter a relationship believing you can change her. This is perhaps the most reliably devastating mistake a man can make, and it's made from the best possible motives, from genuine care, from genuine belief in people's potential for growth, from the desire to be the one who finally provides the right environment for a troubled person to become who they could be. She won't become who she could be. She'll become the person who discovered exactly how much she can extract from a man who's invested in her potential while delivering none of the actual character he's betting on. If she's not a high-quality woman when you find her, she will not become one because of you. This is not cynicism. This is one of the most consistently documented patterns in the entire landscape of male-female relationships. Don't go down that path. The cost is years of your life, and often much more than that. Finally, never believe she's the best you can do when she clearly isn't. Low self-esteem will convince you that a woman with serious character deficits is the best available option because you don't deserve better. This is a lie your undeveloped self tells you, and you should not believe it. There are 8 billion people on this planet. The majority are women. There are women of genuine high character in every city, in every demographic, at every age. The world is not so scarce that you must accept poor character as the price of companionship. Build yourself up. Develop your competence and confidence. Become a man who brings real value to a relationship, and then apply the selection standards that your built self deserves to apply. The character mirror. What to actually look for. Here's where the framework from my old colleague becomes most practically useful. Instead of evaluating women primarily on the basis of attraction, which will always produce biased assessments because attraction is designed by nature to override judgment, evaluate them on character. Use the same mirror you'd use to evaluate any person you were considering bringing into your professional life, your business, your inner circle. How does she treat people who have nothing to offer her? Waiters, service workers, strangers, people at the bottom of any social hierarchy she might recognize. This is one of the most reliable indicators of character available, because how people treat those who cannot help them reflects who they are when performance isn't required. How does she manage her financial life? Chronic debt, impulsive spending, the expectation that her financial irresponsibility is someone else's problem to solve. These are not incidental habits. They are reflections of how she relates to responsibility, to consequences, to the basic obligation to manage one's own affairs. How does she treat her family? The relationships she has with the people she's known longest, who have seen her at her worst and best over years, these reveal the patterns that will eventually show up in her relationship with you. A woman who is consistently unkind to her family, who has burned bridges with people who once loved her, who cannot maintain long-term relationships with anyone. That pattern predates you and will outlast you. Does she keep her word? Is she honest when honesty is inconvenient? Does she take accountability when she's wrong, or does every difficulty become someone else's fault? Is she capable of genuine loyalty, or does she maintain connections strategically based on what each person provides? Is she working towards something? Does she have goals, direction, a vision for what she's building? Or is she simply moving through life reactively, attracted to whatever feels good in the moment and uninterested in the longer arc of a meaningful life? How does she handle conflict? With proportion and maturity, or with escalation and manipulation? Does she argue or does she communicate? Does she seek resolution or does she seek to win? And fundamentally, how does she make you feel about yourself? Does she build you up, recognize your genuine qualities, express appreciation for who you are? Or does she subtly diminish you, create insecurity, deploy your vulnerabilities against you in moments of conflict? These questions, asked honestly and answered honestly, will tell you more about whether a woman is worth committing to than any amount of time spent evaluating her physical appeal. The standard men set shapes the culture. I want to close with something that I think gets overlooked in conversations about male selectivity. When men maintain high standards, when they refuse to commit to low-character women regardless of physical attraction, they don't just protect themselves individually, they shape the culture. For centuries, men's selectivity was a significant force in maintaining female behavioral standards. Women who wanted access to high-value men, committed, providing, protecting men, understood that those men were selecting for character. The incentive structure rewarded high-character behavior in women. Modern culture has disrupted that incentive structure almost completely. The message to men has been, your willingness to sleep with a woman is the primary thing she needs from you, and your standards beyond that are offensive. And in accepting that message, in abandoning the selectivity that once characterized men's approach to commitment, men have removed one of the most powerful corrective forces in the culture. If men collectively decided to recommit to genuine selectivity, to holding women to the same character standards they hold each other, to refusing to commit to low-value women regardless of the social pressure to be non-judgmental, to making their commitment something that must be genuinely earned rather than simply extracted, the effect on how women present themselves and conduct themselves would be substantial. You cannot control what women do, but you can control what you require, and what you require shapes what is worth offering. Set your standards, build yourself first. Learn to be comfortable alone, keep your eyes on character, and let attraction follow it rather than lead it. Walk away from drama, from manipulation, from the need to rescue, from the belief that love can transform low character into high character. And remember, a woman who is worthy of your commitment will demonstrate that worthiness consistently before the commitment is made without needing to be told how. High character isn't a performance for the early stages of a relationship. It's a permanent feature that shows up in how she treats everyone around her, all the time. Whether you're watching or not, that's the woman worth choosing. And she exists. You just have to become the man worthy of recognizing her. Drop a comment about your own experience with selection, what you got right, what you got wrong, what you wish you'd understood earlier. This community is built on men sharing honest experience, so other men don't have to learn everything the hard way. Subscribe, because this channel will keep having the conversations that help men navigate these decisions with clarity and self-respect instead of confusion and regret. Stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.